If you love wisdom, put your mind up to the ceiling. Don't let it stay in the gutter. Don't let your heart get all cluttered. No, I did not stutter. Listen to all that I've muttered. Your life will only go well if you win wisdom or lovers.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
You and I. You and I.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside. Come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
Hey, what's going on? JC Johnson here for The Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And today we are discussing the wisdom of eternity. In the last hour, we were joined by Will the Thrill, and he'll be joining us again for this hour. And we're discussing eternity from the aspect of immortality, man's immortality, before we talked about mortality. So we're going to talk about how these things relate to our lives here in 2018. This is episode 50 of For the Love of Wisdom. So I'm glad that you could join in. We'll be right back.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside.
Hey, what's going on, Wisdom family? Each week on For the Love of Wisdom, we promote a new and free audiobook that we believe you will benefit from and become wiser by listening to. On today's show, we're talking about the wisdom of eternity. And so, the recommended book for this week is From Eternity to Here by Frank Viola. This book is all about God's eternal plans for his creation and how we should be more focused on what he wants to do in the world rather than what we want for our own lives. To download this free book today, just visit audibletrial.com/lovewisdom. audibletrial.com/lovewisdom. All right, welcome back to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And you know, you're listening on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. Here with special guest Will the Thrill of the Lord's Will Show.
Yo, yo, yo.
And today we're discussing the wisdom of eternity, and we're breaking it down by speaking about man's mortality and then also man's immortality. So on the first hour, we discussed mortality, and now we're going to continue the conversation by discussing immortality. So just a quick recap. We started out with this verse from Ecclesiastes chapter 3, verse 11. And this is from the Living Bible translation. And it says, everything is appropriate in its own time. But though God has planted eternity in the hearts of men, even so, many cannot see the whole scope of God's work from beginning to end. So God is the one who puts eternity inside of our hearts. He's the one that lets us see there's more beyond this life. Mm-hmm. There's more than just the grass. There's more than, ice cream. There's more than going to Six Flags or whatever it is. Any great thing that you can imagine, it's all temporary.
Yep. One
day it's going to end. If you're married, as enjoyable as marriage is, one day when you pass on from this life to the next, one day that's going to end. Your relationship with your parents one day is going to end.
I know that all too well.
Yeah, anything, siblings, anything that you hold dear, anything that's important to you in this life, it's all temporary, and that's something that we have to keep in mind. And that's why even as it comes to death, and I experienced two deaths within the last year. My first, it was my brother. He passed away unexpectedly, and my father passed away as well, almost about 5 months later. And so, we never know when things are going to happen like that. We God doesn't give us a heads up. He doesn't say, hey, by the way, next Tuesday, I want you to just be mindful. This person's going to pass away, or just want to let you know you're going to get fired from your job, and it's going to take you about 6 months to find a new one. He doesn't give us all the details all the time.
But you know what? Maybe that's a good thing that he doesn't, because there's a question that is asked by a lot of people. And for some reason, people consider it philosophy. If you came across a book of everything written about your life, would you read it to the end? Yes or no, and why? I would not, because I enjoy surprises. other people would read it to the end. But but knowing how you died is not going to stop you from dying.
Exactly. But it's just like, you remember Back to the Future? You ever seen that?
Yes.
It's interesting because, it shows you how just the smallest thing can impact the way that your life turns out.
Oh, yeah.
Knowing something is not always a good thing. You think, oh, well, I read here on page 32, it said that I was going to trip and fall into a sewer. Well, I better walk around it next time. So maybe you'll walk around that sewer, and you think that you're protecting yourself by not walking into that sewer. But maybe that sewer was there to protect you, because you didn't know that even though you didn't fall into a sewer, you were going to go turn a corner and get attacked by a wild dog or get hit by a car or something.
Well, I mean, even what might seem very inconvenient at the time might, like you said, might just save you from something a lot worse.
Exactly.
And that goes into every aspect of life. I don't know if you've ever watched, an action movie where they take out the bad guy that has a sequel. Well, somebody's got to take that place. And all throughout human history, it's been, when we took out, people from World War I, well, that led us to World War II.
Exactly.
So just because, okay, well, we got rid of that current evil, doesn't mean something a lot worse is going to come along a few miles down the road.
Exactly. And, but that's why, God doesn't tell us everything. I can remember in elementary school, I ate a fish sandwich from, I think it was from McDonald's, and I got really sick. I don't know if it was undercooked or what was going on. Me and one of my friends, we both had that chicken sandwich. We were both sick for about a week. And I didn't eat fish sandwiches from McDonald's for like many years after that.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, but think about it like this. This didn't happen, not that I know of, but let's just say if that didn't happen, maybe one day I was hungry and I had the choice. Should I go to McDonald's or Burger King? They're right across the street from each other. If I didn't have that situation, maybe I'll say, you know what? I'm going to go into McDonald's and go ahead and get a fish sandwich. But maybe because of my bad experience years before, I say, you know what? This makes me kind of sick even thinking about it. Let me go over to Burger King. Little do I know that, I don't know, there's a terrorist or something that blows up the McDonald's. And if I had gone to McDonald's because I didn't have that bad experience from getting sick from that fish sandwich, I could have been at the wrong place at the wrong time.
Funny how the king saves your life.
Yeah, exactly. The king, but he goes beyond just being the king of burgers, right?
Amen to that. But no, I understand what you're talking about, because myself personally, I have a problem with my health where I have to watch what I take in. Too much salt gives me a very bad time for the next week. Mm-hmm. And there's many times throughout the school year I've had to miss school because of health reasons. And it was for that, because I ate something that had too much salt. I got to watch the bacon. If I eat bacon, can't eat too much pork.
Right.
I got to watch the red meat that I take in. A lot of the canned products, they're just filled with sodium. If I go to Burger King or wherever, I got to tell them no fries on the salt. No salt on fries.
Yeah.
But that's just me. But now I know, because of my family history, that's just another thing that I got to watch out for.
Exactly. And, your body, when something shuts down or starts behaving improperly, it's your body's way of trying to protect you. Your body is saying, this is not good for you.
Nope.
Cut it out immediately. So that's just something that we can keep in mind too. I mean, there's some practical things that God has set up for us to protect us.
Yep.
And we just have to be discerning enough to, pay attention to those things. When it comes to our Immortality, though. Again, immortality means, time that never ends. And the Oxford Dictionary, well, that's what eternity means. And the Oxford Dictionary defines immortality as the ability to live forever, or eternal life. It's even in a thinking sense, like it's the quality of deserving to be remembered for a long time.
Yep.
I mean, it's like timelessness. Like, oh yeah, this person has been immortalized, meaning they're just someone who went down in history, someone that people are going to always talk about.
Well, just think of recent history. Think of some famous people: George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy. Just to name a few.
Right.
And like comics and stuff like that, and superhero movies, they talk about having the power of immortality. Everyone thinks that immortality is going to be that one thing that, no matter what it is, that that I can live forever. Well, it talks about in the anime that it does not mean you can't be killed. It just means that you remember being killed.
Right. That's true. But more on that after this. You're listening to North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you, and this is For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets.
You're now listening to For the Love of Wisdom on NorthCoastUnderground.com, where the underground starts with who? No other but you.
All right, welcome back to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And you're listening on North Coast Underground, where the underground starts with you. Here with special guest Will the Thrill of the Lord's Will Show.
Yo, yo, yo.
Came across a pretty interesting article here, and this was published by ABC Action News. Pretty interesting. It says Silicon Valley's newest venture is the search for immortality. So it says here, humans have been obsessed with immortality for, forever. And emperors in Imperial China died from drinking mercury-based potions for eternal life.
Mercury's bad for you people.
Yeah. Now they know. The story goes that Pope Innocent VIII was given the blood of 3 10-year-old boys to fend off impending death. And surprisingly, it didn't work.
You don't say. First of all, how desperate do you have to be to want to drink the blood of 3 of them, right?
Right.
3 10-year-old boys. Yep, that's going to save me. Who was it? The gentleman, he was a famous sailor. He was trying to find what was it? Fountain of Youth. Guess what? They never found it because it doesn't exist.
Right. It was the Spanish explorer Ponce de Leon.
There you go.
He was determined to find that fountain of youth, but it says that he failed. Now Silicon Valley titans are joining the age-old quest, it says here in the article, and it says that they've spent billions of dollars and big brains trying to delay death. It says that Larry Ellison actually donated $370 million to anti-aging research, and they're trying to basically figure out a way to either allow people to live forever, to live forever, or at least to be able to live for 1,000 years, maybe even longer.
There's a problem with that, because the Bible itself says that no one is going to be able to live past a certain age. I've heard 125. Mm-hmm. Who was the last person you heard to even come close to 125 in recent history?
Yes, it's not common.
I mean, you might get some people. There's a handful of people that's been making it to 100, but not really past 110.
And here's the downside. God in his wisdom and in his mercy, sometimes he protects us in ways we don't even realize. Because you might say, well, if I can live for 1,000 years, that'd be great. But what if you were supposed to die when you were 80 years old, yet you took this special serum or whatever, and now you're able to live to 1,000? And on your 79th birthday, somehow you get involved in some hit and run accident or something, and now you're spending the rest of your life in prison. Now, life in prison feels different when you're 79 and you're gonna die at 80 versus when you're 79 and you're gonna die at 1,000. Life in prison sounds like pretty serious. It's already serious enough as is.
Yep.
But imagine adding hundreds of more years on top of that. That's too much for any human being to bear.
Well, that's just one aspect. You could also have, a disease that, deteriorates your body. Like, cancer. Cancer does it. Multiple sclerosis, muscular dystrophy. You've got all these different diseases that immobilize the body.
Right.
What is another one? Diabetes. People don't want to take, dialysis all their life.
Right.
You take that serum and you end up getting diabetes. Well, this is the way I look at it. I'm not saying I believe in karma, but God says when you take something out from, when you take from me, I want to add to you.
Right.
If you're going to take something out of my hands, I want to add to some problems in your life.
And I think that ultimately one thing that we have to look at again, I think that God knows best. He knows what we need, what we don't need. And sometimes we want certain things for ourselves, or we think that we deserve something. But, imagine that there's certain things you think you can handle, but you may not be able to handle. You may say, if only I was a billionaire, what would my life be like if I was a billionaire? And you strive your whole life for that. And maybe you achieve it, maybe you don't. Because some people do, some people don't. And sometimes it's not a matter of, willpower or, anything like that. Sometimes it's just not in the cards for certain people for whatever reason. And you might think that you would be happier with $1 billion. But there's a perfect example of this. There was the drummer, I believe it was the drummer for the Beatles. Originally, he was kicked out of the band. And I don't know if you're familiar with the story, but it was one of the original drummers before Ringo Starr. Ringo Starr was the drummer, right, for the Beatles. Before him, it was another guy who was kicked out of the band because they said he was too good looking and he was getting all the girls. And they didn't like that.
Oh, wow.
So this guy got kicked out of the band. And you know what was interesting? It said that he actually went on to have a more fulfilling life. He lived a more normal life. He still played music, but he wasn't huge like the Beatles were.
Right.
But he says that it was in that he found true contentment, and he was able to just enjoy being with his family and just, not dealing with all of the troubles that many of the Beatles experienced in their life. The drug issues and relationship issues and all the, the stress that they went through.
Well, when you start with one sin, you're putting yourself out there as this amazing person, so you got your pride. Then you want to, vanity. You're trying to get everyone to fall in love with you. Well, the machines, they got to stop. Otherwise, they overheat. Same with the human body. You keep pushing for so long, you're going to need something to keep you going. Most people turn to drugs.
Exactly. And that's a dangerous way to live, most definitely. So,
yes, it is.
Yeah, so I think that the reason why two people turn to substance abuse is because they don't have an eternal perspective. They don't think that, or they don't understand that this life is not all that there is. And so you could say, a person may get into cocaine, heroin addiction, anything like that, because they feel like I'm trying to numb the pain that I'm going through. In a sense, it's being suicidal. Maybe it's a slow death over the course of months or years. But it's like they're trying to self-medicate, trying to take their focus off of life and the different hardships that they're facing. But if they had an eternal perspective, if they knew that this life is already short enough, don't waste your life basically not being conscious of life. But you can actually spend the little bit of time you have, which you don't know how many years you actually have on this earth.
The next second is not even promised to us.
It's not. And we hear about this stuff every day. There's always different tragedies that happen. You have hurricanes, you have mass shootings,
Yep.
you have bombings, you have anything unknown illness that can creep up. Anything can come into your life that's unexpected. So we have to value not even every day, but really every second of life that we have. And we should figure out a way to use it in a way that's actually going to be, something that gives God glory ultimately, and something that we would be proud of, something that we can say, you know what, I actually did something with my life. Right. I didn't waste it. And I think that's the biggest challenge. How do you not waste your life? How can you really make the most of it?
Well, in my honest opinion, to make the most of it, you've got to find a goal. My advice, don't wait as long as what I did, because I feel that even though, yes, I did achieve something, that I waited too long. I should have tried when I was younger.
And you're getting ready to turn 95, is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
so
95 in February.
Yeah.
No, I'm honestly getting ready to turn 30.
Yeah, and so some people would look at you and say, "Oh, you're a young whippersnapper," especially someone who's much older. But someone who's 10 might look at you and say, "Wow, you're old."
Yeah.
But someone who's 55, they're like, "Oh, nah, you got plenty of time."
Oh, you got plenty of time. You shouldn't be feeling any kind of pain. None of that stuff.
Right.
Oh, I'm sorry. I did get hit by a couple cars when I was younger. Those tend to catch up with you, especially when you don't take care of the vessel that you've been given. Right.
So, yeah. Well, I know you have to go, and I'm glad that you could join us. Anything else you want to say before we go to commercial break?
Actually, yes, there is. I do want to inform anyone that's listening that this Friday will be my last show for the Lord's Will show.
Okay.
I have found a job that is taking me away from being able to do all the research and properly be able to dedicate time to it, so I need to put that aside for right now. Don't worry, I do have a podcast that I'm still doing. That's going to go from Wednesday afternoon to Saturday afternoon, because I'll have the free time on Saturday. But the name of that podcast is The World of Mike and Will. It is my cousin who, me and him, we just sit down to shoot the breeze of whatever the current topic is. This week we'll probably end up covering the election and Donald Trump and how the Democrats or Republicans did. I personally think there's still no good choices, but if you want an honest opinion, you got to go out and vote.
Exactly. Well, that's cool. So, where can we hear that podcast?
You can hear it on SoundCloud. You'll be able to find that out on my Facebook. Will Lemley on Facebook, or The Lord's Will Show at gmail.com. That's still going to be in effect. You can find me on Facebook. Go ahead, send me a request. I add everybody on that page.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Will, for stopping in.
Oh, not a problem. Thank you. You have a great weekend.
All right, you too.
It's your boy, Tear It Up, Tommy Tom from Beyond Sports, and you're listening to For the Love of Wisdom
with your host, Jason Johnson.
Hey, what's going on? JC Johnson here for The Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And we had an awesome conversation with Will the Thrill from the Lord's Will Show. And as he mentioned, the Lord's Will Show is actually coming to an end. He's starting a new podcast with his cousin, so you'll be able to check that new one out. As he said, it's available on SoundCloud. He's going to be putting it on YouTube. And you can also check him out on Facebook, on his Facebook page. His name is William Lemley. So just check him out there, and you'll be able to stay up with what he's got going on. And I know that he's going to continue to do great things. Just to conclude, today's show, we're talking about eternity. And I really wanted to mention what some people had to say about it, because we're talking about immortality, right? So we discussed a few in the first hour, but here's a quote from Rick Riordan. This is something that's pretty sobering, but very true. He said, "Life is only precious because it ends, kid." That is short, but to the point. Life is only precious because it ends. Think about that. I mean, your life is only meaningful because it doesn't go on forever, right? Because if life was just something that, you know, you could have plenty of and you were guaranteed no matter what, then it would be different. But what he's saying is that, you know, life is not something that has a particular time that's guaranteed to you. So whatever time that you have, make the most of it. Whatever people are in your life, celebrate them as much as you can, appreciate them as much as you can, enjoy them, because one day either you or them are no longer going to be there. And eventually, you know, none of us are going to be here on the earth anymore. So with whatever time we got to make the most of it. There was a quote from John F. Kennedy that I spoke about on the first hour, but I think that this just has to be repeated. And again, this was spoken by him 5 months before he was assassinated. And he said, in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet. We all breathe the same air. We all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal. That's something that we really have to keep in mind. Kennedy didn't know that he was going to be assassinated in 5 months, but what he said is so true. We are mortal. You're not unstoppable. You're not somebody who can resist anything like you would think when you see some action movies, and it seems like the main character, for whatever reason, no matter what comes at him, no matter how many bullets fly at him, no matter how many enemies throw him through a window or off of a cliff or off of a building, for some reason he just seems to overcome that. But that's not how real life is. Even if you dodge 1,000 bullets, it doesn't mean you can dodge 1,001, because at some point it's going to be your time to go, and nothing you do or what anyone else does can stop that from happening. Here's a quote from Marcus Aurelius. He says, "Your days are numbered. Use them to throw open the windows of your soul to the sun. If you do not, the sun will not soon set, and you with it." Or the sun will soon set, and you with it. So again, your days are numbered. Use them to throw open the windows of your soul to the sun. If you do not, the sun will soon set, and you with it. So just as the sun goes down one day, so will you. Your days are numbered. Again, the message is clear. We don't know how much time we really have. Here's a quote from Hector Berlioz. "Time is a great teacher, but unfortunately, it kills all its students." Wow. That's sobering, but that's something that we definitely have to keep in mind, right? Time, even though it's the best teacher, eventually it kills all of its students, because you know what? Time has a time limit. If you set your alarm, one day, that time is going to count down to that time when that alarm goes off. And nothing you do can change that time. Now, you can say, you know what? I can turn the alarm off, or I can turn the volume down so I won't hear it. But whether you hear it or not, once that has been set, that's it. We have to keep that in mind. Your life is something that is ultimately in the hands of God. He's the one that created you, and he's the one who decides when it's your time to go. You can't stop that from happening. No matter what you do, no matter how many vitamins you take, no matter how often you hit the gym, no matter how cautious you are when you're crossing the street, no matter how many people you don't make your enemies, at some point, something is going to happen to you and you can't stop it. So it's really important that we keep an eternal perspective and remember that our life is only meaningful if we give our lives to God and allow him to order our steps and allow him to lead us and guide us when we speak to people, when we eat, when we drink, when we go to work, when we go home, when we walk down the street, everything that we do, if we do it for the glory of God, then that means that our life is going to mean something. So no matter if you live for 50 years or 100 years, your life is going to be something that changes the world in a positive way. That's all we have time for today, though. My name is JC Johnson. You're listening to For the Love of Wisdom, where philosophy meets the streets. And we will be back next week with an entirely new show topic. Of course, it's still going to be For the Love of Wisdom, but we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to have some different music. We're going to have some different themes, just the way that the show titles are displayed. It's not going to be ending in ITY anymore. That's what it was for the first 50, but for the next 50 we're going to switch it up. So stay tuned next week so you can learn more about that. It's been a pleasure to hang out with you this afternoon, and see you next time.
Knowledge is power, power is money, and money makes the world go round. Money, power, respect, I get it higher, learning, yeah, I'm winning. Only get better with time, you got on my mind with wisdom, there's no limit. There's no limit, get up and get it. Can achieve the impossible, conquer every obstacle. Exhausted from grinding, constantly push and do what they say I could. Life is what you make it. Knowledge is power, don't let them take it.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside, come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you and I.
You and I, you and I.
If you're in love with wisdom, come inside.
Come inside, come inside.
The truth will surely rescue you